Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? I recently saw a video he made and I was shocked. He's in his 80s and still kicking butt and working out and staying active. He did this by just making one change. Chuck says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing too, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/inspired or by clicking on a link below this video. It'll change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/inspired or click on a link in the description below to watch the video now. If the legendary Chuck Norris can do this at 81 years old, so can you. Watch his method by clicking on the link in the description box below, chuckdefense.com/inspired. Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Inspired live stream. I apologize. We had some difficulties, and so we could not. Hold on. There you go. So we could not stream this to Rumble. Sometimes these things happen, and we just have to roll with the flow. It is Thursday, March 7th, 2024. We're into the third month of this year. It's absolutely crazy, and we're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free, we're winning in ideas, we're winning in movements, we're winning in spirit. Yes, we have a lot of work to do, but we are winning. Thank you for tuning in today. Again, it's going to be on X and YouTube, and we're going to upload this later to Rumble. But let's dive into today's subject, which as the State of the Union is happening, the State of the Union by the resident that's going to be delivered today by the guy who calls himself Biden. People are asking, are you going to watch it? It's painful to watch this. It's painful to sit through something like this. But it really leads to the topic of today is, can we actually talk about significant, meaningful change when we talk about the government? Because people seem to be debating in such small boxes. And I'm a systems guy, so I'm wondering, if I'm looking at all the madness, if I'm looking at how can we restructure things, what are practical solutions that we can actually implement in the world today? And could we actually take things to a completely new level? And I want to play a clip for you. It's about 3.5 minutes or so, but it's well worth watching, and it's going to set up the conversation that I would love to have with you all today. So let's watch this together.
The question you have to ask is, what should the role of government be? The founders asked that question, and they came up with a pretty good answer. They said the role of government ought to be but one thing: protect liberty. That's the purpose of government. Now, some don't believe that should be so limited because they believe that the government has to do a lot more. The government has to have safety nets. Safety net for the business people, safety net for everybody else. They've lost conviction that freedom works a lot better than central economic planning. But central economic planning fails.
That is a strong statement to abolish these agencies. What would be in their place?
We certainly don't need the IRS.
I just have to ask you, how would we collect taxes? How would we function?
Well, we would function just like we did for 135 years before 1913. You know, we did rather well. But you're right about challenging that, because if you want the government we have today to pay for a runaway welfare system and believe that we're the policemen of the world, oh no, there won't be enough money. Matter of fact, the income tax hardly even touches the interest, so it's not enough. So that's why they run up debt, borrow money, and then print money. But that's where the problem is. So if you want a good tax system or get rid of the income tax, we have to have a different opinion about the role of government. Today, the role of government is something totally strange from the Constitution, American traditions, because we were supposed to design a system where people had their liberties protected but not for the government to manage our lives and manage the economy and manage the world economy and be the policeman. No, it wouldn't work, and the income tax isn't solving that problem. That just sort of encourages them a little bit.
I am for gun regulations. Let me tell you where I think we should regulate the guns. I think that we should take all the guns away from all the federal bureaucrats, every one of them.
If you were president, would you work to phase out the IRS?
Immediately.
Now, if the Fed were to get out of the way, what would that lead to? What would the world look like, and how would it happen?
It can't happen overnight, and that isn't my position. I want to transition away from it, but I would legalize competition. We ought to have the right to practice free market economics and follow the Constitution, allow gold and silver to be legal tender rather than putting people in jail if they want to do that. If you want to look at what it might be like without a Federal Reserve, look to the latter part of the 19th century, early part of the 20th century, and that is the period of time where we had the most economic
So let me ask you this,
ever.
Why does Israel need our help? We need to get out of their way. They decide they want to bomb something, that's their business, but they should, suffer the consequences. Israel should take care of themselves. Israel has 200, 300 nuclear missiles, and they can take care of themselves. Why should we commit? We don't even have a treaty with Israel. Why do we have this automatic commitment that we're going to send our kids and send our money endlessly to Israel?
We've been involved too much, and I take a non-interventionist foreign policy position. It's not our business. It doesn't serve anybody's interests. It's part of the same thing that led us into the disaster in the Middle East. A lot of people die, and a lot of money is spent, and we're still suffering the consequences of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Our government thinks they can get away with, well, I know the people don't want a war yet, but we're going to play games, and we're going to threaten Russia, and we're going to put on sanctions. And they fail to recognize that we have $500 billion of investments in Russia. Russia has $450 billion invested in the West, and all we're doing is trying to stir up more trouble. It makes no sense whatsoever. So it makes a lot of sense for us to mind our own business and let somebody over there solve their own problem.
And this, of course, was the great Dr. Ron Paul, a congressman for many, many, many years, and the only one that has consistently stood his ground on his principles, and a man I deeply respect for everything that he did in the game of politics. Ran for president a couple of times, was cheated out of the nomination. There's no doubt about it. They changed the rules on him overnight, and the best would be president that never happened, unfortunately. However, there's so much to learn from Dr. Paul when it comes to rethinking, and this is what today's live stream is about, when it comes to rethinking how government should function. We are literally having these petty discussions every day on a collective scale about some new rule or regulation, and what we do as a society is unfortunately fundamentally wrong. We're consistently saying the government should do this. And of course, that's how we were brought up to be and programmed to be. But there's a different approach to things. And I want to run a few ideas by you and see if you actually agree to those ideas. Okay, let's look at this together. Individuals, let me put it this way. That was probably better. Individuals should have the right to make their own choices and decisions as long as they do not harm others. This includes freedom of speech, religion, and association. Do you agree with that? Just think this through with me. Do you agree with that statement? Let's go on to the next one. Individuals should be responsible for their own actions and the consequences of those actions. This includes taking responsibility for one's own health, education, and financial well-being. Should that be the case? If you agree, let's move on. The role of government should be limited to protecting individual rights and providing essential services. There should be no government intervention in the economy and personal lives of individuals. Do you agree with that? I'm telling you, it's a yes for me on all of those. A clear yes, always has been. Free markets and voluntary exchange, there's a typo, sorry, and voluntary exchange between individuals is the best way to allocate resources, not government regulation of businesses and the economy. This is a tricky one because a lot of people think that the government needs to heavily regulate or regulate even more. And I'm going to go into that point. I think that's a pitfall. I'm going to actually stay on this one. This is one that people usually disagree with, that the government should regulate more, not less, and that we should have more regulations, not less. Let me give you a counter argument. The way that it currently stands in most industries in the economy is that where there is heavy government regulation, it favors the mega corporations in their monopoly status, and it heavily puts a heavy disadvantage on any small or middle class entrepreneur or company that simply cannot afford financially to fulfill all the regulations, many of which are completely stupid and senseless. So what mega corporations do on purpose is lobby the government, and this is the politically correct term. Of course, they buy their way into the government in order to put up regulations that they know only they can afford. Not because they make sense, only they can afford them. So they use regulation. It's another way to use lawfare to control a certain spectrum of the economy. Monopolies. That's how monopolies are set up. Governments go and say, hey, I am producing this product here. Now, I want you, government, to regulate how this product can be produced and what it needs to, what standards it needs to have. They're not providing more safety or security or anything like that. What they do is they make sure that only me, the big corporation here, can afford to fulfill those standards. And my little competitor, who might have a better, safer, and longer lasting product, can't bring it to market because the little competitor can't afford to fulfill those regulations. So the argument today is that if we didn't have that, our foods would be even worse. The farmer products would be even worse. And of course, my argument is, how could that possibly be possible? We have horrific foods. We have horrific things that are allowed in foods. We have horrific things that are allowed in pharma. So let me put up a counter argument for a free market strategy. If you, let me use a famous example, the TSA. That's the Transportation Security Agency. And so what they're doing is they're the ones who are patting you down in every airport. They are the ones who are yanking you through the heavy radiation X-ray machines. They're the ones who are treating you inhumanely in your airport. Now, I would say, let's take the free market approach. Take the government out of that process. Let the airlines provide their own security. So let's say I'm American Airlines, or let's say I'm Southwestern, or whatever. I'm an airline, right? You're flying with me. Now you, Mr. John Smith or Mrs. Jane Smith, you've been flying with me every week for the last 5 years with my airline. Do you know how much security I would put you through? Minimal, if any at all, because I have great experience with you. I think I should be, as an airline, providing or creating the security standards for the people that are going on my flight, and every airline respectively should do the same and take it out of the government hands. I think if we had a free and monopoly-free, a truly free market, the best, safest, and healthiest products would win. I think we would have eliminated things that are horrible for the environment. I think we would have eliminated technologies that are very bad for everyone. And I think we would actually have the best of the best of the best. We didn't have a government that suppresses patents. We didn't have a government that suppresses technologies. We didn't have, because they wouldn't have the capability to do it. I think the free market would actually regulate itself by what the consumer, the everyday person, purchases, what they invest in, because a purchase is an investment. Would you invest in a washer and a dryer that is heavily regulated today, but that has, in all instances today, installed a mechanism in it that makes it break after a certain amount of years, coincidentally right after the warranty runs out? Or would you buy that washer and dryer that you know will last you for 30 years with maybe some minor repairs? The answer is simple. Would you have taken that hydrogen-powered car 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when the first people came out with it? Or would you still be driving a gas guzzler that is burning 12 miles per, or giving you 12 miles per gallon, I should rather say, and where the only reason why they're not optimized and giving you 100 miles per gallon is because there is alliances and monopolies in certain areas. A free market, a truly free market, I would say within 10 to 20 years, within 10 to 20 years, maybe less, maybe more, I don't know, but that's my estimation, would create, would help create a completely different environment than the one that we live in now. It would be absolutely amazing. We'd have some growing pains, we'd have some problems, some things to get used to. Maybe we'll take a generation, but a free market would be absolutely better, in my view, than this regulated thing here. Okay, we have a few more points to go through that I want to just ask you if you agree. The non-aggression principle. It is wrong to initiate force or coercion against others. This principle applies to both individuals and governments. What does that mean? The non-aggression principles really means, where you would say, well, where does the government apply force? Well, what happens when you don't comply with certain things that you might have a conscientious objection to? Let's say that you don't like the way supposedly taxpayer money is spent, or you don't like the way that taxpayer money indirectly helps fund government programs, indirectly, not directly, but indirectly. And you say, I don't subscribe to these principles, I'm not going to pay this. You have a clear objection point here. Should someone be able to force you to do things that you know to be wrong? I'm just giving one example. Should anyone be able to use violence to force you to do things you know to be wrong? I don't think that should be possible. I don't think we should give anyone the authority to use violence against others because they don't want to do certain things. Do you agree that individuals have the right to own and control property, both physical and intellectual? Isn't that interesting? I'll give you an example from my own life, how heavily this regulation works. So I'm an artist and a songwriter, right? I've been writing songs all my life. Now, you know what happens when I record my own song, for example, that I write and I release it, which I will do. There's a new song coming out very, very soon, by the way. I look forward to that. Or let's say another artist records a song that I wrote. Now, you would think that I could agree with the artist on certain fees that they pay me because they're using my song that I wrote. You would think that I could negotiate with radio stations or venues or whatever, whenever they play a song, how much they pay me because they used the song that I wrote. You'd be wrong. I can't do that. There's a set rate that the government set. A royalty rate that the government set that I can accept or don't accept, it doesn't matter. That's the rate that I'm going to get paid. Now that translates to, because we're talking about a real life example, you look on Spotify today or Apple Music, a streaming service. So every time somebody listens to a song of mine that I wrote as a songwriter, as the author of that song, I get 0.0004 cents per spin. Now you do the math. I currently in this system, I can't go and negotiate that with Spotify or with any other company. That's a set deal. Do you agree with that principle? Do you agree that the government should be in control of the value of your physical or intellectual property? I don't think so. I think, again, a free market should set the price. Whatever someone is willing to give and whatever someone is willing to receive or give in exchange, that's the only thing that should govern economy. Okay? Do you agree in non-intervention? When it comes to foreign policy, we should be advocating for diplomacy and free trade over military intervention. Or do you think that any nation should be the policeman for everybody else? Do you think that the modern Roman Empire / United States corporation should be the global policeman or the worldwide policeman and get involved in military or use military force to bring about certain things? Or do you think that we should have peaceful conversations, diplomacy, and free trade? If you agree with the principles that I laid out here for you, then you are most likely very aligned with the libertarian principles. Now, what does that really mean? Libertarian, they're actually the original liberals, if you will. Liberal used to be something completely different than it is today. But libertarians are different from conservatives or liberals because fundamentally, the way they view the role of government in society is based simply in a very small set of principles, basically in alignment with the original or the Constitution to a certain extent or mostly, versus ideological motives that should drive nations and governments. So what a libertarian or what libertarians are basically saying, if we have a libertarian system of government, then you can live a conservative life and you can live a liberal life and you can live any kind of life that you want because people are not going to interfere with you as long as you don't harm anyone or their property. The government's not going to interfere with you as long as you don't harm anyone or anyone's property. So libertarianism as a system should be looked at very, very closely, because most people that I know, including our audience, actually agree with these principles. And before they hear the word libertarian, most quote unquote conservatives today, so the people that have, let's say, joined the MAGA movement or whatever, people that even people that are heavy Trump supporters, for example, if you show them these principles, they'll actually agree with you. But yet, in practicality, the government continues to grow. And the libertarian approach is to limit the government size to its absolute minimum and say, here are the roles of government. Now, the only reason why people advocate against it is because they've gotten used to a system that micromanages their lives, their economy, that regulates absolutely everything. And they cannot imagine that a free and educated and spiritual people are capable of doing it themselves, are capable of running their own lives, and capable of coming to sensible agreements. This is a huge leap from where we are, but I can tell you this. The road that we're on, and I've been talking about this, is into the abyss. The forms of government worldwide that we have today do not function. That's what the ruling class, the wannabe elites, the cabal, the dark forces, the entities that are psychopaths, they know that too. So they're bringing in and they're ushering in a new system that will be even more tight, even more controlled. You'll be just tuned into the metaverse while it's happening. You'll just be tuned into the augmented reality while it's happening. And we're saying, no, we have to come together as adults, like I've been saying, and actually come up with solutions and ideas. We've been talking about central banks and how they are a problem, about fiat currencies that are backed by nothing but thin air, about runaway debt, about a debt-based monetary system. Yes, we have pointed out all the problems, and the world is reflecting the problems by all the conflict and the shit that we're seeing. But that means nothing if we don't come up with ideas and solutions that are positively changing things. And there are these things. I'm not saying that the libertarian parties of the world or the libertarian movements have all the answers, but I think it's something worth looking into. I think it's worth looking into Dr. Ron Paul's work. He was a true, or is, he's still around, but as a politician, he was officially in the Republican Party, but he most definitely was not a contemporary Republican. Always a libertarian, always steadfast with the principles. And I think we need to study these things and see if we can come to an agreement, because the truth is that in some places in America, libertarian leaning politicians or city councils or other positions in local government are already being filled, because more people feel this way and think this way than actually officially identify as libertarians. And I don't like boxes, see, but I'm looking at what thought is out there today, what principles are out there that aligns with what we all inherently feel should happen. Because here's the thing that won't work, and I can tell you this, it's an illusion. It's an absolute illusion that we will have no more government. We can name it something different. We can restructure it. We can change it. We can change the foundations. But in any instance where groups of people live together, there has to be a set group or set group of principles that this group of people agrees on. And this can only happen in a self-responsible and to a certain extent self-regulating manner, is when people have a moral and spiritual compass. This does not work in a unethical and basically satanic driven society. It doesn't work, but it does work with spiritual foundations. Where in this system do people get help? Where do people receive support when they're in hard times? The system of libertarianism, to call it that, is looking at the individual, the community, the family, the spiritual institutions as the safety net. And it is saying we need to be responsible individuals. We need to be responsible for our own lives. We need to take care of it. But if we have a problem, then there is a community, and then there is a privately organized charity, if you will, or support system that helps people. Now, people say, well, why don't we just let the government do it and have government programs that support those people? Because then we run into the same problems that we have been running into. Because as soon as the government has that power and that authority and that right, it abuses it by putting restrictions and conditions. That's the nature of the beast. It's not a nature of it's not just the American or the Canadian, or it's all governments do that. They say, here, we will support you. Sure, you'll get your check, but here are the conditions. You have to do this, 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 and that, and that. So welfare, if you will, help, support, should be in any instance as privately organized as possible. And this leads me back to the same principles that we've been discussing for so long, which is community, family, tribes, clans, and having the power, the help, the well-being concentrated there versus centralized in a government run by people you never met, that are controlled by people you've never seen, that want things you've never heard of. And the idea here is that we cannot simply vote ourselves out of this predicament, because it is the same players continually providing similar options that look a little different and sound a little different, but ultimately they serve the system that's in place. If you were to look at what the government funds today, one of the things came out from some appropriates committee that $1 million from the federal government will go to a sex fetish club or fetish kink, I don't know what it's called, in Pennsylvania. Do you think that a government should fund a sex fetish club, or that the government should fund gender studies in Tajikistan? I mean, we are so far removed from the principles. And this is what I'm saying is, if we're adults, if we actually want to change things, we need to think and talk and act like adults and say, okay, how can we restructure this so we'll actually serve the people, not restrict them, not regulate them, not enslave them? And can such a system really succeed? As I'm saying, this needs to be a transition. But let's just say we take this century, of which we have almost 75 years left, or we have over 75 years left. Forgive me, almost 76 years left. 75 years to restructure the system of America, to restructure that government. If we took, it doesn't take that long, but let's just say we take a century to bring it down and to bring it on these original principles and have it in set up in a way that serves the people. Very small, very limited, and free. Do you think it's possible? Well, we need to start thinking in new ways. We need to start talking in new ways. We need to have conversations in new ways. We need to start supporting new things. The old game is over. The old system is over. Like I've been saying for a long time now, the question now is, who will be running a new system? Is it the people, or is it a small, tiny, invisible AI elite, wannabe elite? Because that's the ultimate question we're facing. Most people, and this is what I've never understood, most people that identify our structural problems and challenges correctly decided that it's non-spiritual and it is bad and wrong to be involved in government or politics in any way. And it said, I'm not paying any attention to this. I'm just focusing on my own life. And I've always had a beef with that. I never understood that. I never thought that to be right or correct or spiritual in any way. Spirituality is only worth as much as it is practically applied. And as long as these principles are not practically applied, nothing will fundamentally change. So all it takes is for good people to stay out of the game and for bad people to keep running the game. So I would encourage you, if you take anything away from this, go and listen to the Ron Paul report. He's still out there doing things. Go and study. Read his books, study his work. You might not agree with everything. Just let it sink in for a while and play it through. The libertarian approach is ultimately very much aligned with the Native American approach in many ways that was in place here. That's why Russell Means, if you remember him, was a big libertarian. Actually, people like Alex Jones, whether you like his style or not, or whatever you think about it, big libertarians, most people actually are. And they're currently accepting alliances with people that are fighting the same problem, but might be ideologically in a different category, because sometimes you just need to forge alliances to make things happen. But ultimately, I think this system of government, libertarian system, is very much worth looking into, learning more about. There's a Libertarian Party in the United States, and I think they have been oftentimes probably suppressed pretty bigly. Just something to look into. It's not about party, by the way. I've never been a party guy. Never will be. But look into what's to be learned about it. Look into the body of knowledge that is there. Look into the examples historically, economically, sociologically, educationally. Look at that, and let's see if we can bring that thinking to the mainstream. Because I tell you, many people, if you'd asked them about the principles I showed to you earlier, they would agree. But then you say, well, those are libertarian principles, and then you go, oh, that's too extreme. I'm not that. You know, you actually are. You've just been taught to react this way because your conservative talking heads have told you that libertarian is extremism and that doesn't work, and those are anarchists, and what's anarchy really but self-governance. But hey, so get out of the reactionary bubble and step into, self-ownership. Think for yourself. Look this through. I bet I would actually, I'm putting out a call here to my fellow freedom lovers and speakers that are visible. Maybe you have a show, a podcast, a YouTube channel. Maybe you're a doctor, scientist that has spoken out in the last years. Maybe you're a big personality in the media. And I'm asking you, will you go out and say that you're actually leaning very libertarian? Because a lot of people are. All righty. Before we hop off, I want to thank everybody who joined us. Until next Tuesday, we have a promo here for our Inspired Community and Locals, which is an uncensored community where we do Coffee and Truth live streams and just more behind the scenes, more intimate, more personal stories, and censor free. So I don't have to talk around subjects. If I want to say something, I say it straight, and I don't think about how that could delete our whole communities over the internet. That's what Locals provides. Thank you for that, Locals. So if you want to go there, inspired.locals.com, you just use the promo code TRY4 free, all caps, and you get 1 month completely free trial, and just check it out. And if you want to stick around, like many people do, it's $7 a month or $70 a year at a discounted price. And you support our work, you support our team, you allow us to continue working the way we do. And this is feeding a few families here. So it's helping our editors and it's helping the team behind us to keep things rolling. So Inspire Tribe, thank you so much. Again, inspire.locals.com and use promo code TRY4 free for a month off. And we'll see you there. Much love to you. Many blessings. And I look forward to reading the comments on this. And we'll expand on this subject, what it means and how such a government and system could actually look like. Have a blessed day.